Today I want to kind of go over a couple of the popular CrossFit kettlebell swings we have. Typically there's two of them, but in our group classes we have a third one, and you'll see the difference. The most popular kind of kettlebell swing that we have is an overhead swing. It's what we would define as a bicep to ear position. It's a finish overhead. Some would claim that having the kettlebell upside down is even most appropriate. Some dangle the kettlebell out in front, but they still meet that bicep to ear standard. The other one that's common in RKC is the Russian swing, popularized by the Russians. It's what we would identify as a partial swing, shoulder height swing. They both have differences for sure. One has a greater propensity to travel longer distances, but we find that shoulder range is going to give us more power and more load because of that short range. Neither are right or wrong. I think within their own right, they have great purpose for them. But we also have a third one, which is what we call a hybrid swing. And that hybrid swing is the median between the two. So it's slightly above shoulder height, but it's lower than bicep to ear. And we like that to add a little bit more challenge to the Russian swing without giving up too much technique. What we have found, especially with bigger, stronger dudes, is they can't stand vertical with their hands overhead without compromising the spine. So ideally what we would be looking for, if I tuck myself in so you can see this, it would look like this. Now, guys have a really tough time doing that. Their shoulders are rock solid, they bench for too long. They just need to work on that over time. These movements themselves will indirectly improve that flexibility, but it will have to take its course for sure. So this one in between is great because I get to challenge some more distance outside of the Russian swing, but I don't get this up in the process. So that allows us to get right in there. And that's our hybrid swing. We love that one as well. So let me go over those movements and then some nuances of the movements, the things that we incorporate and we can teach beginner athletes immediately how to move into an effective swing. Our general dose is give them the Russian swing first no matter what, because it's super safe, because of that range of motion. It's going to allow appropriately more loads in this big overhead swing, and it's not going to compromise so much technique. But advanced version, we want them to get overhead, we want a new stimulus. We find that it's more metabolic. It increases that heart rate a little bit more, going higher reps, longer distances. But that's something that you're going to have to decide when you look at the purpose of your training program when you're incorporating those in there. So here's the differences. Again, this is a 70-pound bell, so there might be a little bit struggle on that little back piece. Hopefully I'll make it look good. Here's the Russian swing. Here's the hybrid. And here's the big swing. That big swing is also known as the American swing. We call it bicep to ear. You saw it took me a couple swings just to build through that momentum, really working on staying tight. What you saw initially from me is I stood up, I pulled it from the ground just like I would a normal barbell deadlift, and I started the swing from there. I really encourage that because what we find is that when athletes are standing, that spine is pretty much set. What we need to do is encourage them to keep that spine set while they move through motion. And the best way that we have done that is with the cue, hips back, shoulders forward. It's an amazing cue of reference, right? Because when I'm standing, we're stacked. All the joints are stacked on each other. So that center line is a reference point. So when I'm saying, I want you to initiate with hips back, shoulders forward. If this were my hips and this was my shoulder, it would go hips back, shoulders forward, hip extension, knee extension. Hips back, shoulders forward, hips extension, knee extension. Let me give you a visual of that. Now, some common mistakes that I see, one is just a premature pull. Those you see a lot with beginners are really strong dudes because they want to take it out of their arms and not their legs. We talk about pushing off the ground a lot, really feeling that ground. It's not going anywhere. So we want to take advantage of really producing power by driving through the ground with our legs. The other thing we might see is a deep squat. Now, if I were to take this at high reps, I think this has a great propensity to develop what is known in common personal training fields as the posterior chain. It's just this connection, this glute, hamstring, low back, erectors, this thing that makes you just go bam, just like that. This has a great propensity to do at high reps, heavy loads. So if we're squatting too much, we might take away some of that because it has to switch over onto the quads. Now, if that's your end goal and you want to hit quads more, then sure, go into that deeper squatting motion. Totally fine and acceptable. Just always think about purpose. Why are you having athletes move in those directions? If you can answer that question, that's all that really matters, right? So let me show you the difference between a high hinge and a lower hinge, all right? Again, they're not right or wrong, they just have their own purpose. So here they are. So with those first three, you saw that higher hip hinge, that same initiation, hips back, shoulders forward. And with that deeper squat, you saw me hinge those knees a little bit more. You saw my hips drop a little bit more. I hit those quads a little bit more. You'll see athletes, interestingly enough, once you start to see this a little bit more, you'll see athletes as they get tired, or what we would identify as quad dominant athletes, that if they don't initiate in the beginning with their quads, they do as they get tired. So they hit it nice, right? They're hitting that posterior chain. As they get tired, they'll dip into it and they'll hit this. So they're still meeting those standards that we discussed with the range of motion, but what's really happening with those muscle groups and where we need to identify weakness? That's something you should always be looking for with a coach. So hopefully that's helped you guys kind of identify the swing a little bit more, look at different versions of the swing and how to just quickly cue those things with your athletes. You know, what makes our program really unique is in a group of 10 people, we might have an age range of like 20 years, 30 years, right? From a 20-year-old to the 50-year-old in the same class. So making those modifications appropriately, being able to see the purpose of those movements and how to clean them up is super important. Hope that helps out.